It was just past 11 o'clock at night when Marina first heard it. A faint metallic scrape coming from her daughter's room. At first, she thought it was the old heating system settling, the kind of sound that made a house feel alive in the quiet hours. But then came a whisper of movement, deliberate and soft, a sound that made the hair on her arms stand up. Her heart hammered in her chest as she sprinted down the hallway, her bare feet slapping against the cold wooden floor. When she reached the doorway, the first thing she noticed was the open window. The curtains fluttered like ghostly hands in the night breeze, and on the sill, something had been left. A small piece of paper, its edges curled. She picked it up with trembling fingers, reading the single word written in jagged, almost frantic handwriting. Watch. That was it. No name, no signature, just that one unnerving command. Her stomach dropped. Something was very wrong. This was not a prank, not the kind of innocent joke a child might play to startle a parent. No, this felt deliberate, calculated. She glanced at the sleeping form of her daughter, Anya, who lay curled under the blanket, unaware of the threat just beyond her crib. Marina's mind raced. The sensation of impending danger wrapped around her like a cold, suffocating fog. The next morning, Anya came home from school looking downcast. Marina noticed immediately the subtle slump in her shoulders, the way her small hands fidgeted with the straps of her backpack. And then there was the bruise, faint but unmistakable, near her left eye. "Anya," Marina said gently, trying to keep her voice steady. "What happened?" The little girl hesitated, swallowing hard, her gaze fixed on the floor. She shook her head slightly, mumbling that it was nothing, just a fall. But Marina had learned long ago to recognize the signs. The way children hide pain, the way they lie not out of malice, but out of fear. Marina's mind tightened with resolve. She would not let this go. She would not wait for something worse to happen. She began quietly collecting information. She spoke to teachers under the guise of routine check-ins, carefully asked questions that seemed casual, and noticed patterns in Anya's interactions with other students. Every detail mattered. Days turned into nights of surveillance. Marina began keeping a small notebook where she recorded observations. Who Anya spoke to, who lingered nearby, who watched from a distance. She learned the routines of the school, the shift changes of the crossing guards, the comings and goings of unfamiliar adults. Every evening, she would follow Anya from school, keeping to the shadows, hiding behind parked cars or in alleyways. Her heart would race at every suspicious figure, every glint of movement that seemed out of place. One evening, that she noticed him. A man in his 30s, average height, dark jacket, following at a distance. Anya seemed unaware, walking quickly as if sensing something, but the man kept pace. Marina's chest tightened. She pulled out her phone and started recording, keeping the camera discreetly angled to capture the stranger's movements. The first confrontation came unexpectedly. Marina had waited near a small park, hidden behind a line of trees. When the man tried to approach Anya as she played on the swings, Marina stepped out, a voice sharp and commanding. "Hey, back off!" The man turned, startled, and for a moment, they stared at each other. He looked aggressive, his eyes scanning for weakness, but Marina stood her ground. She grabbed Anya's hand and moved toward the busy street, never letting go. The man cursed, muttering under his breath, but did not follow them beyond the line of sight of other pedestrians. Marina took a photo of his face, committing every detail to memory. That night, she contacted the authorities. She showed them the images and recounted every incident, every suspicious behavior, every subtle threat that had occurred over the past weeks. The police nodded, making notes. But Marina knew the system could move slowly. She could not rely solely on their response. She had to remain vigilant herself. Weeks passed, but the tension never eased. Anya grew quieter, more withdrawn, and Marina felt the weight of constant fear pressing on her chest. She slept lightly, every creak of the house a potential warning. The notes she had collected were her lifeline, her strategy against an unseen threat. Then came the night that would change everything. Marina was in the kitchen when she heard it. A knock at the door, deliberate, forceful. Her heart leapt into her throat. She peeked through the peephole. It was him, the man who had haunted their lives for weeks. His eyes, cold and calculating, met hers through the glass. He raised a hand, and for a moment, Marina felt the room tilt, the air grow thick and suffocating. She did not hesitate. She dialed the police, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. "He's here. Now. Please hurry." She grabbed Anya, who had woken at the commotion, and moved to the side door, ready to leave the house at a moment's notice. The man pounded on the door again, fury etched across his face. But before he could break through, the distant wail of sirens reached their ears. The man fled into the night, disappearing as quickly as he had arrived. The officers arrived moments later, taking statements, securing the perimeter, and promising that he would be apprehended. Marina held Anya tightly, her arms aching, her body trembling from fear and relief. In the days that followed, life slowly returned to a fragile semblance of normalcy. Anya smiled again, tentatively at first, then more freely. Marina allowed herself moments of rest, though the memory of the threat lingered like a shadow. She had saved her daughter, but the world had shown her its indifference, its capacity for danger lurking in plain sight. It was during one quiet morning, months later, that Marina found the envelope. Among bills and mundane letters, it stood out, plain, unmarked, except for a single phrase scrawled across it in jagged handwriting. "You won the game, but the game never ends." Her stomach dropped. The fear she had buried deep inside rose again, heavy and unrelenting. She knew, with an almost suffocating certainty, that this was not over. The struggle to protect her daughter had won them a temporary reprieve, but the story was far from complete. Marina's hands shook as she held the note, realizing that heroism did not grant immunity from fear. It only sharpened the need to remain vigilant, to be always ready, to stand guard over the ones she loved most. And deep inside, she understood that some threats never truly vanish. They merely wait, patient and silent, for the right moment to return. For now, she would breathe. She would let Anya play in the sun, laugh in the schoolyard, sleep peacefully at night. But Marina knew that one day, perhaps sooner than she wished, then she would have to confront the shadows again. And when that time came, then she would not hesitate. The morning after Marina found the note, a chill clung to the air. The sun streamed through the kitchen window, but it did nothing to warm the knot of anxiety in her chest. Anya was at the table, quietly eating cereal, her small hands trembling slightly as she held the spoon. Marina forced herself to smile, though her mind raced. She decided to take action before the shadow returned. She contacted a private investigator, someone discreet and experienced, who promised to look into the man who had terrorized her daughter. His name, she had learned from the police, was Andrew Keller, a former teacher's aide who had been fired for inappropriate behavior. The authorities had enough to keep him under watch, but they lacked the evidence to keep him off the streets permanently. Marina knew that would not be enough. Days turned into weeks of quiet tension. Every unfamiliar knock at the door, every car slowing near the house, set Marina's nerves on edge. She carried her phone everywhere, ready to dial at a moment's notice. She stopped answering calls from unknown numbers and even refused to check the mailbox alone. Anya, sensing the tension, became clingy, wanting to hold Marina's hand constantly, not wanting to be alone. One evening, while checking the backyard before bedtime, Marina noticed footprints in the damp soil near the fence. They were fresh, small, careful, but deliberate. Her stomach twisted. Someone had been there. Not Andrew. These footprints were smaller, more precise, as though someone was testing the waters, probing the perimeter. She knew then that the threat was evolving. It was not just Andrew. Someone, or something, was watching them, waiting. Marina installed cameras, but she did not rely on technology alone. She trained herself to observe, to notice the slightest anomaly. A neighbor's car parked slightly too long in front of their home, a shadow moving behind curtains, a distant figure that lingered just outside the playground. Her life became a constant vigil, a careful choreography of movement and observation. One day, while walking Anya to school, Marina felt eyes on them again. She turned sharply, scanning the street. A man leaned against a lamppost, his face partially obscured by a cap, but there was something familiar in his stance. Her pulse quickened. She clutched Anya's hand tightly, pulling her into the flow of other students, blending into the crowd. But the man's gaze followed them, unwavering, patient. At school, Marina confronted the principal. She presented the photos, the evidence, and the accounts of previous incidents. The principal listened carefully, his expression serious. He promised to increase security, to keep an eye on the perimeter. But Marina felt the unease creeping back. She knew there were limits to what anyone else could do. Protection required vigilance, courage, and a willingness to confront danger head-on. That night, as she tucked Anya into bed, the girl whispered, "Mom, I'm scared." Marina kissed her forehead, holding her close. "I know, baby," she said softly. "I know, but I promise, I'm always here. Always." The words were a lifeline, but they did little to ease the tension coiling in Marina's chest. The following week, Andrew Keller's presence became more brazen. He left notes at the school, threatening messages that skirted legality, but were enough to terrify anyone who read them. Marina collected every scrap, photographing the handwriting, saving the evidence, documenting patterns. She was preparing, anticipating, training herself to respond quickly. But she knew she was in a dangerous dance, and one misstep could be catastrophic. Late one night, Marina noticed movement outside her bedroom window. She crept silently to the edge, peering through the blinds. There was Andrew, standing beneath the streetlight, his eyes scanning the house. He seemed calm, methodical, as if he had rehearsed this encounter countless times in his mind. Marina's breath caught. She dialed 911 immediately, whispering details to the operator, who assured her that officers were en route. But Marina also grabbed the baseball bat she kept by the door, preparing for the confrontation she knew could come at any second. Minutes later, the lights of the patrol car swept across the yard, illuminating Andrew's figure. He vanished into the darkness before officers could reach him. The patrol car stayed nearby for the rest of the night, but Marina knew that would only delay, not prevent, the next attempt. Her vigilance could not falter. Over the next few weeks, Marina's life became a study in controlled fear. She learned to read shadows, to anticipate movements, to detect the slightest anomaly. Anya began to rely on routines, but even then, Marina could not fully relax. Every phone ring, every knock, every unexpected sound made her heart race. Then, the breaking point came. It was a rainy Thursday evening, the kind of rain that blurred the edges of the world, turning the streetlights into smeared streaks of gold. Marina and Anya were returning from the grocery store, bags heavy in their hands, when they noticed a figure following them. The man moved deliberately, staying just outside the range of streetlights, blending into the wet shadows. Marina's instincts kicked in. She tugged Anya into a narrow alley, her mind calculating every move, every escape route. The man followed, step by step, but Marina was prepared. She blocked his path, her voice steady but commanding. "Stop! You do not follow us!" And figure hesitated, and then lunged. Marina reacted instantly, shoving Anya behind her and swinging the nearest object she could grab, a metal shopping cart handle, at him. The man stumbled back, cursing, but recovered quickly. Marina realized then that physical confrontation was unavoidable. She would not allow fear to paralyze her. She would fight, she would protect, and survive. The struggle drew attention. Neighbors peered from windows, and a few brave souls shouted, causing the attacker to retreat momentarily. Marina grabbed Anya, running toward the main street, heart pounding, lungs burning. She felt every muscle in her body straining, every nerve alert, ready to react to the next threat. By the time police arrived, the man had vanished into the rain-soaked night. But Marina had recorded everything on her phone, evidence that would ensure he could not simply disappear without consequence. And yet, she felt no triumph. The encounter was a reminder of the fragility of safety, the constant vigilance required to protect those we love. In the days that followed, Marina considered moving. She thought about leaving the city entirely, finding a place where shadows were less threatening, where anonymity could be a shield. But the thought of abandoning her life, her home, her routines, felt like surrender. She would not surrender. Not to fear, not to threats, not to those who sought to terrorize her daughter. Anya's resilience surprised Marina. Despite everything, the girl laughed again, played outside, and spoke about school projects with a tentative enthusiasm. Marina knew it was her courage that allowed Anya to reclaim some semblance of childhood. She held that knowledge like a shield, a reminder that heroism was not about invincibility, but about persistence, presence, and unwavering love. Yet, even with these moments of reprieve, the shadow remained. Another note appeared in their mailbox weeks later, carefully placed among mundane letters. "You cannot hide forever." Marina felt a surge of anger and fear, a mingling of dread and determination. She realized that the fight was far from over. Whoever was behind these threats, whether Andrew Keller alone or someone else, was patient, methodical, and relentless. Marina strengthened her defenses. She installed additional locks, reinforced doors, and even began taking self-defense classes. She trained in ways she had never imagined, learning to anticipate attacks, to move quickly, to act decisively. Her body became as alert as her mind, every muscle attuned to survival, every thought focused on protection. One late evening, as Marina reviewed the security camera footage, she noticed something chilling. A figure, smaller than Andrew, appearing near the edge of the frame. The figure moved with precision, almost deliberately avoiding detection. Marina froze. Whoever this was, they had been watching, waiting, and learning. The threat had evolved. It was no longer just the man who had terrorized her daughter. It was something larger, more cunning, and more dangerous. Marina knew then that her heroism would be tested in ways she had never imagined. Protecting Anya would require not just courage and vigilance, but strategy, a foresight, and a willingness to confront fears that lurked in the shadows of their lives. And as she watched the figure retreat into darkness, a cold determination settled in her chest. She would not let this threat win. She would not let her daughter become a victim. The storm of fear had only just begun, and Marina understood that every day, every decision, every movement mattered. The shadows were patient, but so was she. And when the moment came, she would strike with the precision and courage of a mother determined to defend her child, no matter the cost. By the time the autumn wind began to strip the leaves from the trees, Marina's life had become a tightrope walk. Every movement, every sound, every unexpected knock at the door set her nerves alight. She woke before dawn, checking windows and locks, and went to bed only after double-checking the perimeter cameras. Anya, sensing the tension but trusting her mother, followed routines and rules, but her small hands often sought Marina's grasp in quiet moments of fear. One evening, Marina noticed something unusual on her front porch. A small envelope, carefully taped under the railing. She did not rush to open it. Instead, she photographed it, noted its position, and called the private investigator she had hired months ago. He promised to trace the paper, the handwriting, and any clues that might lead to the person or people responsible. But Marina knew that tracing could take weeks. Weeks could be enough for an attack. She decided to escalate her own vigilance. Marina began walking Anya to and from school herself, refusing to leave her in anyone else's care. She mapped every route, noting potential hiding places, escape routes, and even cars that lingered longer than they should. Every day became a calculated plan for survival. The first real confrontation came on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Marina and Anya were walking home, bundled in coats and scarves, when she noticed a man lurking near the corner of a side street. His posture was casual, but there was intent in the way he moved. Marina's stomach tightened. She clutched Anya's hand and started walking faster, deliberately blending into a crowd of students leaving the nearby school. The man followed. Marina did not panic. She had trained for this. She turned sharply into a narrow alley, leading Anya into shadows where she could observe without being seen. Her heart pounded, but her mind was clear. She could feel the man's gaze, tracking them. She pulled her phone from her pocket and began recording, keeping her movements deliberate but discreet. Suddenly, the man lunged. Marina shoved Anya behind her and swung the nearest object she could grab, a metal pipe left by a construction site, striking him in the shoulder. He stumbled back, cursing, but recovered instantly. Marina knew she could not hesitate. She grabbed Anya and ran, dodging puddles and debris, heading for the busy main street. By the time the police arrived, he was gone, disappearing into the dark, rain-slicked streets. Marina showed the footage she had captured on her phone, detailing every step, every movement. The police took notes and promised to investigate, but Marina's instinct told her that this was far from over. Back at home, Marina could barely sleep. Every creak of the house, every distant sound of footsteps jolted her awake. She realized that her life had become a constant alert, a perpetual readiness to confront danger. Yet, despite the fear, she felt a strange sense of power. She was no longer just a mother trying to protect her child. She was a warrior, a strategist, a guardian against an invisible threat. The following weeks were a tense blend of normal life and hypervigilance. Marina continued her surveillance, documenting patterns, noting every unfamiliar face near the school, every suspicious car passing by. Anya, for her part, tried to remain cheerful, but Marina noticed the subtle ways her daughter flinched at sudden movements or locked doors a little too quickly. The trauma lingered, even as the immediate threat seemed contained. Then, one night, it escalated in a way Marina had not anticipated. She was checking the security footage when she noticed something chilling. A shadowy figure moving outside the backyard cameras. Small, precise, almost like a cat stalking its prey. It was not Andrew Keller. This was someone, or something, new. The figure lingered near the fence, careful to stay out of the camera's range, watching. Marina's stomach churned. The game had changed. She called the private investigator immediately. "There's another one," she whispered, voice tight with urgency. "Someone else is watching us. They're clever, careful. I think they're learning from him." The investigator promised to increase monitoring, to use advanced tracking methods. But Marina knew she could not rely solely on others. She had to act, had to anticipate, had to remain one step ahead of this unseen adversary. A few days later, the first direct threat arrived. Marina found a note tucked into her mailbox, sealed in plain white envelope. "You think you can protect her? Think again." No signature, no identifying marks, just the cold certainty of menace. Marina's pulse raced. Whoever wrote this knew she had children, knew her routines, knew her fear. That night, she lay in bed, Anya curled beside her, listening to the steady rhythm of her daughter's breathing. Marina's mind replayed every detail of the past months. The attacks, the notes, the shadowy figures. She knew she had to prepare for something more violent, more personal. She trained with her self-defense instructor late into the night, learning to react instinctively, to anticipate attacks, to turn fear into action. A week later, it happened. Marina had taken Anya to the grocery store just before dusk. The streets were slick from a recent rain, reflections shimmering on the asphalt. As they left, Marina noticed a van parked slightly too close to the curb, windows darkened. Her instincts flared. She guided Anya behind a cluster of trees near the parking lot, her body tense, ready. A figure emerged from the van, moving with deliberate stealth. Marina recognized the gait. It was different from Andrew, but it carried the same intent. She grabbed Anya and ran, dodging into a crowded street, hoping the crowd would offer protection. The figure followed, relentless, weaving through pedestrians with precision. Marina reached into her bag and pulled out her phone, dialing 911. She spoke calmly but urgently, giving the location and describing the attacker. The figure faltered, glancing around, but Marina's calm confidence seemed to unsettle him. She pivoted, leading Anya down an alley, then through a side street, always keeping him in sight without revealing her movements entirely. The police arrived moments later, and the attacker vanished into the night, leaving no trace. Marina showed the officers the video she had captured, detailing his every move. The investigators were thorough, but Marina knew the danger was far from over. Whoever this was, they were patient, meticulous, and adaptive. The shadow had learned. The next days were a blur of heightened security and relentless vigilance. Marina strengthened locks, added surveillance, and trained herself to notice the slightest anomalies. She taught Anya what to do if someone approached, turning fear into preparedness. Yet, even as they created a semblance of safety, Marina understood that true safety was an illusion. The shadows could strike at any time, and she had to remain ready. Then came the note that would change everything. It was slipped under the door while Marina and Anya slept, sealed, unmarked, and terrifying in its simplicity. You can protect her today, but tomorrow is another story. Marina held it in trembling hands, reading and rereading the words. She realized then that her struggle was not only against one man, or even two. It was against a system of threats, a network, a relentless force that fed on fear and patience. She knew she had to confront the threat directly, to stop waiting and start acting. Marina began planning, studying patterns, mapping out potential scenarios. She trained in close-quarters combat, practiced quick escapes, and even rehearsed confrontations with both attackers in her mind. Every detail mattered. Failure was not an option. For Anya's sake, Marina became sharper, faster, and more aware. Every sound, every shadow, every unexpected movement was a cue. Marina could sense the presence of others before they made themselves known. Fear had become a tool, shaping her into a mother capable of anything. And yet, despite all her preparation, Marina understood one terrifying truth. The final confrontation had not yet arrived. The shadows were patient. They had been watching, learning, adapting. And when they struck, there would be no warning, no hesitation, only the raw clash of survival instincts. The storm of fear, vigilance, and courage had only just reached its peak. Marina knew that the moment to act was coming, and when it did, everything she had endured, the notes, the attacks, the shadowy figures, would culminate in a confrontation that would test her courage, her skill, and her love for Anya in ways she could never have imagined. The first week of December was cold and gray. Marina wrapped Anya in her thickest coat, pulling the scarf up to cover her mouth as the wind cut through the streets. They walked home from school in near silence, each step careful, calculated. Marina's senses were sharp, every sound amplified, the scraping of a car door, the distant bark of a dog, the rustling of leaves along the sidewalk. She had noticed small things in the past few days, lights flickering in nearby houses, cars parked in unusual patterns, and strangers lingering near the school. Each detail, she realized, was not random. Someone was learning, observing, testing boundaries. The stakes were higher than ever. That evening, Marina decided it was time to confront the situation more aggressively. She called the private investigator, sharing her concerns about the new figure lurking in the shadows. Together, they devised a plan to monitor key areas more effectively, to anticipate movements, and to prepare for a confrontation if necessary. But Marina knew the ultimate responsibility rested with her. Late that night, as she reviewed security camera footage, she noticed something alarming. A figure had approached their property in the dead of night, moving with meticulous caution. It was not Andrew Keller, and it was not the figure from the alley weeks ago. This person moved differently, faster, quieter, more deliberate. They had studied the property, understood its layout, and were ready. Marina's blood ran cold. She realized that the threats were multiplying, evolving. Whoever was behind this, she thought, had patience and persistence far beyond anything she had imagined. But she also knew she could not give in to fear. She had to act, to protect Anya, and to reclaim a sense of control. The next day, Marina took decisive action. She arranged for a temporary relocation of Anya to a friend's house nearby while she prepared their home for a potential confrontation. She installed reinforced locks, additional cameras, a motion sensors, and even a small safe room in the basement. Every detail was accounted for, every precaution taken. Despite the preparations, anxiety gnawed at her. Every creak of the house, every shadow cast by the streetlights sent her mind racing. She barely slept, lying awake next to Anya's empty bed, imagining every possible scenario. But she also felt a sense of determination growing within her, a resolve that nothing, no threat, no shadow would take her daughter from her. 3 nights later, the confrontation began. Marina had been reviewing security footage when she noticed movement in the backyard. She grabbed the baseball bat she kept by the door and crept toward the stairs, her heart pounding. The figure was there, crouched low near the far fence. Marina's breath caught in her throat. The figure turned abruptly, revealing a face partially hidden by a hood. It was not Andrew Keller. It was someone younger, perhaps in their 20s, but the intent in their eyes was unmistakable. They were there to intimidate, to test, to challenge. Marina's mind raced. She could see escape routes, weak points, and possible defenses. Every second mattered. She stepped forward, a voice firm. "You do not belong here. Leave now." The figure froze, sizing her up. Then, in a sudden burst of movement, they lunged toward the basement door. Marina reacted instinctively, swinging the bat with precision. The figure stumbled back, crashing into a storage shelf. Items fell around them with a deafening clatter, but Marina held her ground. The struggle continued for several minutes, each movement tense and precise. Marina's training, her vigilance, and her determination allowed her to anticipate the figure's actions, blocking strikes, dodging attacks, and keeping herself and the property secure. Finally, exhausted but unbroken, the figure fled into the night, leaving Marina standing in the chaos of overturned boxes and scattered tools. Breathing heavily, Marina surveyed the damage. Her home had been violated, but she had protected it. She realized then that courage was not about strength alone. It was about presence, awareness, and the willingness to act when faced with danger. The following days were a mixture of relief and lingering fear. Marina strengthened her defenses further, contacting authorities to ensure continued vigilance. Anya returned home, cautiously optimistic, and the two of them began to rebuild a sense of normalcy. But Marina knew that vigilance could never entirely end. The threats had tested her resolve, her skill, and her courage. But she had survived, and she had kept Anya safe. Then, on a seemingly ordinary morning, a final note appeared. It was slipped under the door, carefully folded, with a single, chilling sentence. "You've won the battle, but the war is not over." Marina held it in trembling hands, the weight of its message pressing on her chest. She understood now that the struggle for safety was ongoing, that vigilance and courage were not temporary measures, but lifelong commitments. Despite the lingering fear, Marina felt a surge of pride and empowerment. She had faced threats that would have paralyzed most people, had protected her child through strategy, courage, and love. She realized that heroism was not about invincibility. It was about persistence, presence, and the relentless commitment to protect those who cannot protect themselves. And as she held Anya close that evening, watching her daughter sleep peacefully, Marina knew one thing with absolute certainty. No matter what shadows waited, no matter how patient or cunning, she would face them, always, without hesitation. The first week of January brought with it a biting wind, carrying the scent of snow that had not yet fallen. Marina and Anya were careful as ever, walking the same paths, avoiding the empty streets, checking corners, and remaining vigilant. Every sound seemed amplified in the cold, every shadow a possible threat. Marina had become hyper-aware, constantly scanning the surroundings, anticipating danger before it appeared. Then came the unexpected escalation. It started with a phone call late one night. The number was blocked, and when Marina answered, there was only silence on the line, followed by a faint click. Her heart hammered. This was new. They were moving from notes and shadows to direct intimidation, invading her life in ways she could not control. Over the next few days, she noticed small but deliberate signs. Footprints outside her bedroom window, the sound of distant footsteps on her porch late at night, and the faint glint of reflective surfaces moving near her property. It became clear that the person, or people, behind these threats were learning her routines, adapting to her vigilance. Marina intensified her preparations. She reinforced doors and windows, installed new locks, and expanded her surveillance system to cover blind spots. She trained herself in close-quarters defense, focusing on speed, reaction, and precision. Every night became a series of drills, imagining worst-case scenarios and practicing responses. She could feel herself growing stronger, sharper, more prepared than she had ever been. One evening, as she returned from picking up Anya after school, Marina noticed a van parked across the street. It was nondescript, but something about it set her nerves on edge. She took Anya by the hand and moved quickly down a side street, blending into the small groups of students and pedestrians. The van moved slowly behind them, and Marina's instincts told her they were being followed. She ducked into a narrow alley, pulling Anya close. Her mind raced as she considered every escape route, every possible intervention. She knew that confrontation was inevitable. And then, as they emerged onto a busier street, the van sped off. But she knew this was only temporary. Whoever was behind the threats was patient. They would return. A week later, Marina received another note, this time slipped under the door of their mailbox in plain sight. It was short and chilling. You can run, but you cannot hide forever. The handwriting was precise, deliberate, almost mocking. Marina felt a surge of anger and fear. This was no longer just a test of courage. It was personal. That night, she stayed awake, listening for any sound, watching the perimeter cameras. Hours passed with nothing, but her instincts were sharp. At 2 o'clock in the morning, she noticed movement near the far corner of the property. A figure crouched low, moving cautiously, almost silently. Marina grabbed her phone and dialed 911, whispering the details to the operator. She also armed herself with a heavy metal flashlight, ready to confront whoever dared approach. The figure moved closer, slow and deliberate. Marina's pulse raced, but her mind was clear. She remembered every drill, every strategy, every lesson learned from the past months of preparation. When the figure lunged toward the basement door, she reacted instinctively, striking with the flashlight and shouting commands to maintain control. The figure stumbled, but recovered quickly, and a tense struggle ensued. Marina blocked strikes, dodged attacks, and maneuvered with precision, keeping Anya safe behind her. The fight was intense but brief. The intruder finally retreated, disappearing into the night. Marina surveyed the scene, heart pounding, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She had protected her daughter, defended her home, and survived yet another confrontation. But even in that victory, she understood the truth. The threat was evolving, and she could not let her guard down. Whoever was orchestrating this had patience, skill, and determination. Marina's courage had been tested, but the ultimate challenge was yet to come. In the following days, she strengthened the security measures further and maintained constant vigilance. She taught Anya simple strategies for safety, turning fear into preparedness. The girl began to regain confidence, but Marina knew that the shadows were waiting, patient and persistent, always learning, always observing. Then, in the middle of a quiet afternoon, the final escalation occurred. Marina returned from errands to find the front door ajar. She froze, her heart racing, every sense alert. Stepping inside, she saw signs of forced entry, drawers opened, objects overturned, but most importantly, the note. Tonight, the truth comes. Panic surged, but Marina channeled it into focus. She grabbed Anya and retreated to the basement safe room she had prepared months earlier. She barricaded the door, checked cameras, and waited. Hours passed, tension so thick it was almost tangible. And then she heard it, the faint creak of footsteps above. Someone was in the house. The confrontation began swiftly. The intruder, careful and deliberate, tried to enter the basement. Marina, prepared and resolute, blocked the door, holding her position. The struggle was immediate, intense, and desperate. She used every technique she had learned, strategic strikes, blocks, and maneuvers to maintain control. The intruder's strength and persistence were formidable, but Marina's determination, sharpened by months of vigilance, gave her the upper hand. Finally, after what felt like hours compressed into minutes, the intruder retreated, leaving a trail of overturned furniture and a sense of raw, unresolved menace. Marina held Anya close, tears streaming down her face, a mix of relief, fear, and pride coursing through her. She had faced the shadow directly, defended her child, and survived. Yet, as she examined the note left behind, a sinking realization struck her. The person, or persons, behind these attacks had planned meticulously. The struggle was personal, targeted, and far from over. The final confrontation, she knew, would reveal truths about the threats that she could not yet imagine. Marina's heroism had been tested beyond ordinary limits. She had faced fear, strategy, and violence to protect her daughter, and she had prevailed. But she understood now that courage alone was not enough. Vigilance, preparation, and an unwavering commitment were essential. As she finally allowed herself to rest, holding Anya close, Marina understood the truth that had been building for months. The threats had pushed her to the edge, forced her to grow stronger, and revealed the depths of her courage. She had survived, yes, but survival came with the price of constant awareness, the burden of vigilance, and the knowledge that darkness could return at any moment. And as the winter wind howled outside, Marina knew that she would meet it head-on, with strength, determination, and the relentless courage of a mother who would protect her child at any cost.